Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel Mcadams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. You know, there's been something in the news, and we brought it up in the report over the weekend about what's going on with China and the Philippines. And the new president, relatively new president, Duterte, has been rather bold in his language, and it's all anti-American. And of course, he's been and has been, and to some degree still dependent on America for some reason. But he's pivoting to China. He wants to go to China. Now, already we know that the United States have had a pivot. Obama's been very clear, I'm pivoting to Asia. I guess he's getting tired of the Middle East and all this, but he wants to pivot and concentrate and sends naval vessels over there to the South China Sea as if we're going to have a great World War II naval battle, going on. But we need to talk a little bit about the significance of this. It can't be ignored. In one sense, I don't think this is about ready to break out into a naval war or a lot of troops moving, but it could be very, very serious for international relations. We have a treaty, of course, with the Philippines and so many other countries, bilateral. Anything goes wrong, we're obligated. The treaties obligate our kids, and they probably, like usual, wouldn't declare war or anything, would be involved. But we've already sent naval vessels over there, and that's naval vessels and aircraft carriers. It's sort of World War II. A submarine can take care of these vessels in no time. So it's significant, but I want to talk a little bit about what really is going on here. Why did this just happen, or has it been smoldering there and we just all of a sudden had the president of the Philippines, go to China, and he's been in our face, so to speak, and in the president's face. He has said very vulgar and unkind things to our president. He has no right to insult our president. We have a right to do that, but he's not allowed to do it.
Yeah, he's a pretty colorful figure, that's for sure. He certainly, in some ways, doesn't appear ready for prime time, certainly with his language. But the issue is deeper, and it's a long-standing issue. As with the U.S. has had a long relationship with the Philippines, as you know, since 1898 and before, probably. And the issue now is China, and there are disputed islands. As a matter of fact, we have a graphic that we could put up that shows really what a small neighborhood this is, and what significant players, geographically at least, the Philippines and Vietnam are in the scene. You can see China up there. You can see the Scarborough Shoal in the north part of the Philippines is where there's some disputed fishing territory between the Philippines and China, and that's been really the source of their aggravation with each other over this time.
And one thing is, it's not about navigation. China has not threatened, probably won't threaten, because trillions and trillions of dollars of goods and services, go back and forth through the South China Sea. So that hasn't been the issue. It's been these small islands, these dredging of producing new islands, the fishing grounds, and who settles these disputes. And it probably has some tricky international questions raised, but it's just been recent that this has been brought up, and the big question is what will the United States do? The one thing that concerns me a little bit is that I have a saying about foreign policy that, well, we have two foreign policies. If these people from these other countries, their dictators or their leaders, do what we tell them, we give them money. But if they don't, we call in the CIA. And even though since 1992, the major bases have been closed in the Philippines, we still have troops in there. And let me tell you, it's the troops that go in and out of the Philippines are anti-terrorist groups, and they also, believe me, they have CIA agents there. So maybe in reality, it's sad that these countries should be thinking about where are the CIA agents and what could happen. It's not unusual throughout history for us to become annoyed. My guess is, though, that's not likely to happen. I wouldn't predict that our CIA is going to get involved and leadership is going to change. But I wouldn't be surprised if more money transfers, money from the American taxpayers who don't have it, and sent over to dictators over there that won't help the poor people in the Philippines. That is one of the things that could happen from this squabble that's going on.
Yeah, and the whole origin is just, it sort of blew up a few days ago when Duterte was in China, and he announced pretty vociferously that I've had it with the U.S., I'm pivoting toward China, I want to trade with you more, I want economic ties. And he had to walk back the statement a few days later when he got home. And he said, I'm not talking about severing diplomatic relations, but he made a good point. I'm talking about us being so caught up in U.S. foreign policy to our disadvantage. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but he makes a good point. The U.S. interest in the South China Sea is not necessarily the interest of the Philippines. The U.S. is interested in projecting power, controlling the region, controlling Asia. That's the whole reason we got involved in the Philippines in the first place. The Philippines just want to fish for some fish off of their coast.
Right, and there's reports that if you just go and talk to a lot of Filipinos, the average man on the street is not necessarily anti-American. I'm sure there's a lot of mixed feelings because we have a president there that comes across as being very anti-American. But I found it interesting that not only did he say, I'm giving up, I'm through with the United States, I'm going to China. He went to China, but he also throws in, I'll go to Putin too if I need some help. And that of course, could be significant. He may seriously think that. In a way, it could be just the emphasis on the fact that when America loses its influence and the dollar continues to slip away as the reserve currency, that here we have China, and maybe the Philippines think that maybe China and Russia and India will have another reserve currency that will challenge the dollar. You say, well, it still doesn't make much sense because he should be our friend and China's friend, but there's a lot of smoldering resentment against the United States, the foreign policy. So, yes, if somebody's benefiting by our largesse and our bases and they have jobs, but also a lot of people just get really tired of it, that we're always telling them what to do. And it's not an official loss of sovereignty, but in many ways it's a loss of their decision making. And I think part of the problem, not only is our aggressiveness, that's a problem, but I think it's also a problem is what countries like the Philippines, what they do. If they understand true libertarian philosophy and sound money, they could have taken the Philippines after they finally got their independence from the United States, turn it into a huge Hong Kong. Just invite people in. Say, come here, put your business here. We're going to keep taxes low, and we're going to deal with sound money, and we're going to honor and respect property rights. But that never seems to happen. But I don't think it's so much a political decision. I think it's an economic decision of ignorance. I don't think they realize what could be done, if they accepted a different form of government. So they mess up. There's a lot of poor people. The fishermen want to make a living, and then we get into these squabbles, and then they have to depend on the United States. Now the argument is we're already there. I mean, because of the anti-terrorism program, the Filipinos know in the southern part of the Philippines they have threat from Islamic terrorists. At least that is what is said. So there's a motivation there to probably hang on to ties with the United States.
You mentioned earlier, some frustration with America, the man on the street in the Philippines. And as you wrote in your column, while the Americans are obsessing over the election, things are happening overseas. The media hasn't covered it very much, but there was a pretty significant protest in the Philippines in the last couple of days. Violent, anti-American protest. The police, actually, there's the dramatic video, the police rammed the protesters with their police car. I think they severely hurt some people. So there was some very violent demonstration against the U.S. putting troops there. And this goes back to the 2014 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. The bases were closed in 92, but then we went ahead under Benigno Aquino in 14 and signed this agreement, and it allows three things to happen. Joint training missions between the U.S. and the Philippines, military training missions, multiple bases for U.S. forces. That'll be 5 U.S. military bases, where we only had 2, 5 bases, and 3 pre-positioned U.S. military equipment on the Philippine island. And I think you can understand why people would get upset, because if the U.S., I would say aggressive foreign policy in the region does continue and does explode, there's a huge target painted on the back of the Philippines for a Chinese missile.
In many ways, we're still trying to figure things out from the consequence of decisions made by our government in 1898. I think of 1898 is that the manifest destiny that we Americans endorsed at that time had gone offshore, because although we were involved in Central America and different places, to take over a country and own it and run it, it was always, we made the country bigger because it was manifestly our duty to expand and get rid of the Indians and get rid of the Mexicans and all this, and we made a big country. So, but this was the opening salvo, I think, to the 20th century interventionism of foreign policy, which was more blatant and more direct, and we will take over and we will be the kingmakers. And here we are, 100 years plus since then, and we're still trying to figure this out. What should the relationship be? And it just seems so strange that people can't say, well, maybe we should have a completely different relationship. That's why I certainly I agree that we don't need this bilateral agreement. I think they're all very, very dangerous. I think we should defend this country and be strong and powerful. And instead of guaranteeing that we'll take care of them or guaranteeing that we will help them in any way whatsoever, or we try to mold them and change them, it can be done, in voluntarism. If we did a good job here, maybe they would emulate us. Matter of fact, the drug issue might be a good issue to say that. I wonder if they're emulating us in any way. But of course, what are they going to say? Oh no, they're killing people, over there in the Philippines.
Yeah. Good thing we're not doing any kind of drug war here.
Right.
But we both noticed an article by Doug Bandow, who we've known, and he's spoken at some of the lunches in the old days, and he made a good point in a way which is that okay, let's just take what Duterte said and let's use it to our advantage and use it to back away from, as you say, this bilateral mutual defense treaty, and to back away to some of our commitments to the Philippines and sort of rework it in a way that's actually mutually beneficial.
Well, that would be good, but that's so logical. I'm not expecting that to happen. But it'll be interesting to see, I think, how the media treats this, or whether they ever talk about it. Maybe they won't talk about it, and there won't be any shouting between the Philippines and our president that after the campaign's over, they might not even bring this up. But obviously, it's smoldering. It is there. We talked about the South China Sea several times already, thinking issue. That our policy there of immediately sending ships over there. So that in itself, must aggravate a lot of people. Oh, the Americans are coming. Look at this aircraft carrier, and we better do what they tell us, or they might shoot us all, and start bombing us.
Yeah, I think this caught Washington off guard when he said this in China. I think that may be enough to put a price on his head. I don't think they take kindly to people speaking out of turn. This goes back to the Dulles brothers. They don't like independent-minded people in that region. And
even in the Middle East, you cannot take the position, I want to be friends with both sides. No matter where it is, you have to be. How about what our president said during the Iraqi war? You're either with us or against us. You didn't have any choice. And if you weren't with us, we're going to come and get you. Yeah. I mean, that was about as aggressive and blatant as we've ever had. And I don't think foreigners forget about that attitude. So attitudes are pretty darn important. The way we throw our weight around and then have bad policies, and who knows where this is going to lead to.
Doug makes a good point just in closing. He kind of a good quip. He said that America collects allies like other people collect Facebook friends. That's not a good foreign policy.
There you go. Well, anyway, I consider this a very important issue, although I don't believe we're on the verge of a major war breaking out there. But wars break out after periods of time of misunderstandings and people pushing one side against another and can't anticipate how each country is going to react. And like Daniel just pointed out, the president of the Philippines, he essentially might have caught our government off guard. So that is important. But I tell you what shouldn't catch us off guard is the failure of interventionism. This is an example of the lingering effects of the Spanish-American War, which was purely concocted. And at the time, we were expanding our empire. The initial big phase. China at the time, the Hawaii at the time, Puerto Rico, Philippines, all of this, and we're still living with this, so it's not going to go away very soon. I think it's time that we really consider, non-interventionism as a foreign policy. Believe me, the whole world would be much safer and much more prosperous. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.